Hey guys, another video for you. Uh, Obviously, same shirt equals same day. Um, trying to get as many of these videos done in as short a time as possible. Just trying to get to that point where I can start getting to the recent episodes, to where I am at the series, just so that it's less stale commentary. There are parts in my videos where I'm just I don't have quite as much conviction about what I'm saying as in others, simply because, well, I've forgotten some things about the series, and there are certain things which have stuck in my mind. So, um, once I start getting back into the more recent episodes that I remember more clearly, hopefully things will get better. Hopefully, I'll be able to give more in-depth analysis. But until then, I'm just gonna try and get out as many videos as I can. Um, just try and get out as much information as I can on as many of the episodes that I can, so that we can get to the more interesting content, so that we can get to the content which um, is a lot more recent, is a lot more what's going on today, what I'm thinking today, as opposed to weeks or months ago, kind of thing. So continuing on from two videos ago, we finished off at episode 4. So we finished talking about episode 4, and we're going to start with episode 5 now. So episode 5 is based around, so the crew of the Raza, or all the characters, are hired by basically a handler. So a handler is basically just someone he's a middleman who hears about jobs from different corporations, from different organizations, and he hands out these jobs to the crew. Um, that way they have work. That way they have someone who can get them work and doesn't really have a dog in the race, kind of thing. So he lands them a job. He gets them a job, working for the corporations, working for the energy corporations. That way they can kind of garner support, just kind of stay on good terms, relatively good terms with all of the different corporations. That way they don't kind of burn any bridges, kind of thing. And so he sends them on a mission to get some salvage from a freighter, from a derelict freighter who's just kind of who just kind of got spaced. It got knocked out. It's not responding, so on and so forth. So just getting salvage from the freighter, and partway through, uh, it turns out that there are zombie-like people on the ship. Um, they're basically like zombies. They are zombies on the ship, which was kind of weird to see. Like, up until that moment, it had been very, you know, only only humans. Like, it was very normal. It was very just humanity, but in the future, kind of thing. Whereas with this introduction, it kind of adds that sci-fi fantasy element, which I thought was a little unusual. I thought it was a little out of the blue. Like, it just 4 episodes was really cool. It was really great. It was all sci-fi, and it was so cool. And then in the fifth episode, zombies, because why not? But they end up fighting off zombies as they attempt to get the salvage and then return to their ship. And partway through it, 1 in 3 get separated from the rest of the group, and they have to rely on each other to survive. And there's a whole bunch of talk between them about, how much or how far 3 is able to push 1 with the whole blackmailing thing, which seemed a little, I don't know, it seemed a little forced, the whole writing for that, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad, but again, nothing got solved by the end of the episode. And then that was basically it, right up until the very end of the episode, where 2 got bitten by one of the zombies. She got bit by one of the zombies, which didn't seem, I mean, it happened near the beginning of the episode, but it didn't seem like such a big deal. It wasn't made out to be such a big deal until the end of the episode, when it turned out that it was a disease It was a disease with no known cure, and so within a few hours, most likely, she was going to turn into one of the zombies. And then she didn't, and they ran diagnostics on her, and apparently the virus was no longer in her anymore. She was not going to turn anymore. And it just kind of ended there. And that was it. That was kind of the ending. Which raised a few questions, which was good. So that point right there was good, was the fact that you didn't know what was going on, you didn't know why she wasn't turning, you didn't know why it had all of a sudden just disappeared. But beyond that, there wasn't really anything good about the episode. It wasn't very interesting, it didn't have a whole lot going on, it was kind of just, okay, we got on there, we found some cargo, and we're getting the heck out of there, and oh no, where are 1 and 3? We have to go find them and get them, and stuff like that. Like, it was very linear. It was very, nothing really happened. It was kind of like a filler episode that just raised one question at the end. And filler episodes are okay, but I didn't want a filler episode so early on in the show, to be honest. But it was alright. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't anything special. That being said, we then get into episode 6. And episode 6 is by far, I think, my favorite episode of the entire series. And it's not even because it was written incredibly well. It's not even because the acting was suddenly brought up, like the level of acting was suddenly heightened. It wasn't because of any major thing that happened. It was the small details. So the focus of the episode is Five believes that with the help of Android, or Seven, and the equipment in the infirmary, that she can enter into her subconscious and kind of do some digging, do some investigating into who the owners of these memories are that are inside her head. So all of these memories that she's experiencing in her dreams and her visions, she believes she can go and experience them and kind of remember and find out whose they are. So it's centralized around the fact that she might be able to find some answers about who people are. And who people were before they joined the crew of the Raza, or before they woke up on the Raza, which was fun. And then there were complications, like her vital signs started going bad while she was in that state, so they had to pull her out. And then when she had recovered, she decided she wanted to have another go at it, and she went back in, and there were problems, and they couldn't pull her out. So they had to send 6 in after her to try and help bring her back. And when he finds her, there's a lot of focus put on the fact that she's found a couple lives that some of the crew members had lived before their time on the Raza, and it was so peaceful, it was so nice. They had families and so on, and it was, it really showed a lot of her character, about who she was, that she believed that that kind of lifestyle, even though she knew it wasn't real, was kind of something that she didn't want to give up. It really showed that despite how much she cared for her crewmates, the kind of person that she is would just really prefer a peaceful life where she could live happily, just with a loving family that she had never known before. And that was the first moment that I actually cared about one of the characters, because it really showed this innocent side to her. It really showed this caring, this young side to her that you hadn't quite seen before. Before, she had been that rebellious teen who wanted to be more mature, who wanted to be taken as an adult, treated like an adult. And here she was in this dream world, in this dream state, reliving what we find out to be one's past. And she wants to stay there because it's peaceful, because it's a life that doesn't involve danger, and you find out that she really did want memories of having a family. And that was just like a moment that everyone could connect to. That was just a moment that I could connect to. That, you know, as cool as it might sound, or as interesting as it might be to have people forget their memories and to go through this amnesia type experience, you kind of forget that they're people. You kind of forget that they're humans with feelings and emotions all on their own, and that they woke up not knowing who their family are, not knowing who their parents are, if they had siblings, if they had friends. Like, when you think of it that way, and when it's put in front of your eyes in that way, I just really connected to that. I realized, oh my gosh, like, this is such a fundamental thing that everybody should have, and they don't even remember if they had it or not, let alone if they did. It just it really did bring the humanity, like, it really did bring the humanity in her character to the forefront. And that made me care about her. That made me just grow closer towards her character. And this was the first time that I had grown close to a character, that I'd actually started to care about one of the characters. And so this showed marked improvement. This is the main reason that I love this episode, because it made a point. It didn't stress the point. It didn't, like, kind of shove it in your face. It was just kind of something that was there for you to pick up on your own. And since I did, that little, like, just that small detail that was in there, just made it all the more special. And that's why I love the episode so much. So by the end of the episode, Six manages to convince her that, it's not real, the life she's living isn't real, and she needs to come back. And then they leave. They leave, and she's able to talk to various people about their memories and about who they were before they arrived on the Raza, and you start to learn a little bit more about the characters. It doesn't do a whole lot towards character development then, but it does kind of lay the foundations for in the future. So when this episode was said and done, I was excited for the future. I was for the first time I was interested in seeing how they were going to progress with the show. And so that just made it, that just made the series for me. This episode was just made a million times better. This series was made a million times better just because of this episode. Episode 7 is a little undecided for me. Not a lot happens, but you learn about 3. And you learn about 3, and kind of, it's the first time you find out that he actually cared about someone. So 3 everyone finds a woman in a stasis pod who is just asleep in a stasis pod. And this is a woman from 3's past. And they had fallen in love, and kind of throughout the episode it's made clear that she's kind of dependent upon him. She trusts him, and she doesn't know all of these other people, so he spends more time with her, even though he doesn't remember, even though he's not very comfortable being around her. Slowly he starts to understand that, well, she needs him right now, and stuff like that. And then by the end of the episode, something goes wrong with the ship, and the power goes down, and so her stasis pod stops working. Her stasis pod stops working, and she dies. She had a disease, and that's why she was in the stasis pod. And when the stasis pod stopped working, it allowed the disease to continue to spread through her body, and she died. She passed away. And when this is done, it takes a clear and a obvious toll on 3. Like 3 takes it very, very seriously, and he's very affected by it. And this is so contrasted. This is such a stark contrast from who his character was before, that it was completely out of the blue that it would affect him so much. And that kind of shock, that kind of surprise, that kind of contrast did allow for, pardon me, it did allow for me to kind of see past the fact that before then he had been a very boring character. And even after this, in the next episodes to come, it still doesn't affect a whole lot, but it was kind of like, it was a brief little light in the darkness that kind of just said, hey, you know, this is a character just like anyone else, and he is going to have his time to be explained and to kind of be for you to connect with him. And you know, it wasn't that time yet, but it was a glimpse into what could be. So that was the main focus around that episode. Next episode, episode 8, is focused around 6, which was surprising to me. I wasn't expecting it to be focused around 6's backstory, which was interesting for me because there were more characters, more interesting, that people wanted to see, and that the TV series was seeming to focus on more. They were seeming to focus and put more attention on other characters, like 2, like 1, like 5, in the past, and not a lot of attention had been focused on 6. So when the focus went to 6, it was a surprising change. And it was at this point that I kind of realized that the past couple episodes and just kind of this pattern of just kind of one episode to briefly show a very small portion of each character's backstory, which is kind of an interesting way of going about it. Usually some TV series like to just kind of throw a lot of information at people all at the same time, and just kind of allow them to figure it out for themselves, allow the audience to figure it out for themselves, and to make the judgments as they see them. And then they just keep different concepts for each episode, and in each episode you learn a little bit about everyone. Whereas this instead has single episodes kind of dedicated towards sort of better understanding one character. And in this case, it was 6. And 6, you find out, was a rebel fighter. He was in a rebel army, basically, fighting against the GA, or the Galactic Authority, Galactic Alliance. I forget their name, but fighting against the GA, and it turns out that a raid that they had been on, they had stolen a battle cruiser, or a ship. They had stolen a ship from the GA, and it was this huge thing. It was this big deal. They stole it from a space station, and when they got back, they found out that without their knowing, their heist had simply been a cover plan for the rebellion to kind of smuggle a bomb onto the space station. And once they had gotten clear, then that bomb had been detonated, killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians. And when 6 realized this, he kind of lost it. Like, it totally destroyed him, the fact that the people he had been fighting for, the people he had been taking orders from, were capable of committing such an act. And so it's just, you learn so much more about him, kind of thing. And you know, it kind of follows, in this episode, it follows him as he retraces his steps, as he tries to find this person, as he tries to find the person who had ordered the attack in the first place. And it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting to follow. You're not necessarily following it as closely as you could. Like, it's a little hard to understand, but that's good. Like, it's good to be tough to understand. It's good for things to be difficult to read or understand. The second thing that happens in the episode is you learn who One is. So what ends up happening is One ends up using 1 and 4 end up using what's known as a cloning technology. So they use cloning technology. So it reads your DNA, it reads your genetic blueprint, and it recreates a clone for you to kind of show who you are. And when they see that clone, or when they wake up as their clones, it turns out that One doesn't actually look like One. He looks like someone else, not completely different, but he looks like someone else in very subtle ways. He's not himself. He has a different facial structure kind of thing. Like, he's a different person. And he kind of has to prove that he is himself. He is One to 4, because 4 just suddenly realizes that One isn't who he is anymore. So, it's just another clue that One isn't who we think he is, and it's another clue that there's more to One than we think. So these are all these little hints being left behind, and it's all little nice touches. So at this point, the TV series is actually getting better. It's starting to not be quite so obvious in where it's going. It's starting to put a little more thought and a little less description into its episodes. It plants ideas rather than just saying outright what's going on. So, it's getting better in my eyes at this point. So last episode I'm going to talk about is going to be episode 9. And episode 9 is... it's alright. I'll say this. It's only about one thing. And that's never really something that I like about episodes, is when there's only one thing going on. But it's an interesting thing. It's an idea which is enjoyable. So you learn about 4 in this episode. And this is interesting because this is enjoyable because 4 is such a quiet guy, such a you don't know what he's thinking kind of character, that you are interested in his backstory. And it turns out that he was a member of a royal family who rule an empire, basically. Who basically ruled the equivalent to the Chinese empire. And in that day's society. And he was labeled as a traitor and as the person who killed the emperor, his father. He killed his emperors in order to gain his throne. But due to what we know about 4 and what 5 has seen in her visions and in her dreams, 4 did not actually kill his father. It was his stepmother, the emperor's wife, who killed him and then framed for the murder. And so in this episode, he spends a lot of time with the emperor's bodyguard, who was sent to meet him and to kind of talk and to have a private meeting together. And eventually 4 gets captured, and he's being taken to court on trial for the murder of his father. And on the way there, they're assaulted by bandits, by people who kind of are self-proclaimed, rulers of the woods or whatever. people who claim to be an authority but aren't. They're just bandits or thieves, and working together, they fight off these attackers. Um, and then and then they get the help from the crew of the Raza. And the Emperor's bodyguard mentions that even though he owes a debt to Four, he will do his duty and will bring him in whenever he has the chance, if he ever gets the opportunity. And Four nods like, yeah, I totally understand, and then he kills them. And then he kills him. And that's kind of all that happens in the episode. There is a small moment in the episode which is between 1 and 3, where 1 is kind of thinking about killing 3. Like, he points his gun at him and is about to shoot him, and then it does the whole, oh, there's someone over your shoulder, I'm gonna shoot him, and then it's gonna be like this whole moment where, like, yeah, I just saved your life kind of thing. It's like, yeah, thank you. Like, that kind of whole stereotypical moment kind of thing. And that happens, and that's just kind of a small moment of character development in there. And that's basically it for that episode. So that episode was a little less, that episode was not as good as the ones before it, but it still was better than the first few episodes beforehand. So the video is getting a little long now. I'm gonna end it there, and I think hopefully I'll be able to finish the first season in the next video, but maybe not, because I'm probably going to be spending a lot of time on the season finale. I might make the season finale a video all on its own, because I'm going to have a lot more to talk about that. That being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!